very odd and strange when you watch those videos with Diddy and Justin Bieber talking.
It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they love me and, just turn their back on you in a second.
Bieber, just looking at his body, I ain't no body language expert, but he just seemed very uncomfortable.
Justin Bieber's camp is finally responding. So his representatives told TMZ, quote, although Justin is not among Sean Combs' victims, there are individuals who were genuinely harmed by him. Shifting focus away from this reality detracts from the justice these victims rightfully deserve.
I think that I was just, living in this shame, living in all this sort of stuff of my past, and I wasn't able to move on.
Are we going to see some
In front of the entire courtroom? What did Justin Bieber say during his testimony that caused Diddy to lose his cool? According to witnesses, it was an unexpected moment that left everyone in disbelief.
How young I was and so impressionable. And you have everybody telling me how awesome I am at all times, and like...
It's like taking a kid and putting a kid in a room full of nothing but sweets.
Right.
And just saying, I'll be back in 2 days.
Exactly. I just want people to understand, the psychology behind why I potentially could have problems in my life.
So a lot of people watching this have probably seen this swirl on social media about the connection between Justin Bieber and Diddy.
Right.
This has been going on actually for years, where people have wondered what kind of a relationship did they have, and really what people are asking is, did Diddy Justin Bieber?
Okay, I had to trim that. He said people are asking, did Diddy Justin Bieber? I had to trim that out. Just letting you know, I don't know what else is going to be said in here, but that had been the rumor, that had been speculated, and a lot of people are just trying to figure out, is that tied to the connection of him spiraling, and it just seemed like he's very depressed out there in public, and it seemed to be heightened when all the news about Diddy came out. So that was a connection.
No, it can't be, because one of the biggest questions in the Diddy trial is what other celebrities will be named, who participated in the freak-offs and who witnessed the freak-offs. I mean, Diddy's white parties are infamous, and one of the victims that people have been talking about for about a year and a half now has been Justin Bieber. And now finally, after week 1 of trial, when we know that Don Richard is the next witness and we're going to start hearing who the government thinks is going to help corroborate their case, we are not going to hear from Justin Bieber. And it really goes back to a video when he was about 15 years old, when Combs said he was going to spend 48 hours with Justin Bieber. And that's when all the speculation began. Bieber's camp didn't say anything until now, but I think it's important that he did, and he also, like many celebrities in Hollywood.
Though the courtroom was already tense, things took a sharp turn as Justin Bieber entered through the doors. Nobody anticipated his appearance, much less his decision to testify. It was one of those times when you could just feel the room erupt in a collective gasp. The media had been speculating about possible witnesses for days, but nobody was paying any attention to Bieber. Undoubtedly a well-thought-out move with a calm assurance. He entered with his head held high and his eyes unwavering. No sign of hesitancy in his actions, Bieber appeared more like a man on a mission than a music star while wearing a dapper, modest suit. His composed manner suggested how dire the situation was. Although everyone was watching him, one man was the main attraction, Diddy. He froze as soon as Bieber showed up. Surprise was too obvious for the normally poised music mogul to conceal. His brows raised just enough, and you could see him whispering tensely to his lawyers. Audience members leaned closer, their whispered conversations piercing the quiet as Bieber walked over to the witness stand. Although they promptly brought the chamber back into order, even the judge was a little surprised. In addition to Bieber's identity, the layers of history between the two men were what made this appearance so startling. They have been allied for years. Under Diddy's close eye, Bieber rose to prominence, while Diddy, a titan of the industry, cast a long shadow over popular culture. There were repercussions in the courtroom from the notion that Bieber would testify against someone who had previously been his mentor. Additionally, it appears that Diddy had knew what was coming. It gave the drama a whole new level. It was evident from the glances that he and his crew were taken by surprise. Bieber's assurance remained unwavering during the oath. He responded to the judge's inquiries in a composed manner, displaying none of the anxiety that would have been reasonable in the given situation. Everyone leaned in to wait for what was about to happen, and the audience's whispers subsided. This was a mature man with something to say, and the seriousness in his face made it obvious that he wasn't the carefree, boyish Bieber that fans had grown up with. Restraining the decision to withhold Bieber's evidence until the very end was not made by chance. According to experts, the prosecution is using it as a calculated tactic to surprise Diddy's team. And it worked, boy. There was a noticeable change in the vibe in the room. Attorneys drew closer to one another, swapped files, and spoke urgently in whispers. Diddy, meanwhile, was sitting motionless and only sometimes fidgeting with his watch. If the purpose of this was to make him uneasy, it was succeeding. But the question everyone has is, why was Bieber's testimony so important? Asked Diddy's tight circle. And the private parties he hosted have been the subject of years of rumors, cloaked in speculative Hollywood gossip. The fact that Bieber was there seems to validate that these weren't merely idle rumors. Truths were going to be revealed, and based on the way Diddy shifted uneasily in his seat, he knew it too. His testimony hadn't even started yet. As Bieber took his seat in the witness chair, the courtroom sank uncomfortably. Not talking, there was so much anticipation that you practically wanted to grasp it. People looked at Diddy and Bieber, anticipating. Who would blink first? Bieber was calm, even icy, on the exterior, but those who knew him sensed the resolve beneath it. He had a narrative to tell, and he wasn't holding back. Diddy, on the other hand, couldn't maintain his cool. One small motion here, one deep breath there. He was disintegrating in real time. He was shaken not only by Bieber's appearance. That was what it stood for. The courthouse wasn't merely a location of the day's court proceedings. The setting seemed to be the culmination of years of preparation. Diddy knew that whatever happened next would not be favorable to him. And you could practically see the wheels turning in his mind as he bent over to whisper something to his lawyer. But what specifically did Bieber say? And what information may he divulge that would change the course of this trial? One thing was for sure. Everyone in the room realized that the stakes had just increased significantly.
Yeah, so, I just want to protect her, you know? I don't want her to lose it. I don't want her to, go through anything I went through. I don't wish that upon anybody. So, if she ever needs me,
Let's just say that Diddy didn't do anything to Justin Bieber. I'm just wondering, because of Justin Bieber's age at the time, did he have women, and when I say women, I'm talking about grown women, come over and, you know what I mean? Because that would still be bad. So, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Another possibility could have happened.
Emails, the text messages, the words that she put, those words of affirmation. So to the extent that there are other victims, that's how the government's going to be able to overwhelm the defense here. And if it's a celebrity victim, even better.
See, here's the thing. I think about it, and I'm sure he didn't want to. I guess the idea is, not distract from the conversation that's being had. But to make a statement towards the end of the week, after opening statements, or towards the conclusion of Cassandra Ventura's testimony, when he makes a statement confirming that there were people harmed by Combs, does that signify to you that he believes the prosecution's case, or does he think it's beyond the criminal case and based on the accusations we've seen in the civil arena?
I think it's probably the former. And like you said, the key part of that statement was denying that he was a victim, but really talking about the other victims. And it wasn't alleged victims. He said other victims, well, through his spokesperson. So I think that is very, very important. This isn't a Michael Jackson type case where, celebrities are rushing to Combs' defense. Very few people are. And the fact that you have someone come out that really isn't 50 Cent or someone who, is trying to make light of it or...
Without hesitation, Justin Bieber's opening remarks on the stand were straightforward and devoid of anger or aggression. "I'm here to tell the truth," he said, his eyes locked with the prosecution as if he were trying to make sure every word landed precisely as it should. The courtroom was quiet as everyone waited to hear what one of the biggest performers in the world was going to divulge. Rumors and stories had been circulating for years, but nobody in the audience anticipated that Bieber would make them come to life in such a straightforward manner. And straightforward manner, Bieber painted an image of a younger version of himself when he talked about his early encounters with Diddy. Bieber said, his voice calm, but tinted with something deeper, "I trusted Diddy because I was eager to fit in, grateful for his mentorship, and frequently went along with him without question." At times, it appeared as though he was picking his words carefully, almost purposefully omitting details, but even those omissions had significance. As soon as the judge questioned him about a few things, namely Diddy's notorious parties, Bieber stated, "I've seen things at those parties that I can't forget," after pausing briefly. His words are being watched by the room. That sentence appeared to loom like a cloud over the courtroom. It was straightforward but powerful. By things, he meant what he had seen. Suddenly, Diddy, who had been sitting motionless in his chair, shifted, clenching his teeth and looking quickly at his legal team, who were frantically taking notes, as if Bieber had just validated decades of speculation. With just one well-crafted sentence that wasn't the end of Bieber. He talked about the eerie mood of those events without getting into all the specifics. How he was able to detect things wasn't right even as a teenager. His voice was firm as he stated, "There were times when I felt like I didn't belong there, like I shouldn't even be in the room. There were a lot of people who were a lot older, and it always felt like you," he said, divulging incidents that suggested a deeper, more problematic dynamic. "Were not permitted to inquire. You were there just now." The atmosphere in the room had drastically changed by the time Bieber began to get specific. Everyone was bending forward. Pens from reporters were flying across notepads, and Diddy's legal team appeared more and more alarmed. Bieber, the odd influence gatherings seemed to have on individuals who went. He claimed it wasn't merely a party, but was under control. "You didn't inquire about it. You didn't object," the crowd muttered. After hearing the line, the case might take a very different turn if what Bieber was hinting at turned out to be accurate, rather than just being a setback to Diddy's brand. However, it was when Bieber talked about how these incidents and Diddy's influence affected him years later that the audience truly became animated. In an indication of how those early experiences influenced his mental health and career decisions, he acknowledged that he had battled for years to make sense of this. All his words brought a punch, not only because of the things he was disclosing, but also due to his identity. After spending years as a symbol of wealth and stardom, Justin Bieber is suddenly revealing a much darker side to his history. Then the time that was clearly rattling came. "There were many of us, and we all knew it. No one said anything back. Then because we couldn't," Diddy Bieber stated without hesitation. That one sentence weighed like a ton of bricks on the room. People who hadn't been paying close attention were now frozen in shock, and their expressions showed it. And did he break? His head shook slightly, but noticeably, his jaw was clenched, and it appeared as though he and his lawyer were having a private quarrel. All demonstrated how much this testimony had unsettled him. Diddy was only exacerbated by Bieber's composed speech. The defenders appeared to be frantically trying to recover control, but Bieber was not slowing down. He didn't testify that merely supporting the prosecution's argument, the whole story was being rewritten by it. The harm was done by the time he stepped off the stage. When Diddy said those last words, the audience was giddy with anticipation for it seemed cornered for the first time. Not only was what Bieber said startling, but it might have been a case-breaking statement.
We're told that he didn't really have any relationship with Diddy, that all of these videos are performative, and that Justin was friends with Diddy's two sons, but it really wasn't any kind of a relationship with Diddy.
Y'all feel what I'm feeling? Hold up. He said something very interesting in there. He said that Justin Bieber isn't a victim of Diddy's. But he didn't, a lot of times when you hear them talk, and I even have to throw the word out there, but he said that Justin Bieber's team said there are other victims. He didn't say allegedly, right? He didn't say there's allegedly other victims. Also, I'm just thinking, like, if Diddy is saying, or Justin Bieber is saying, his team is saying that Justin Bieber was friends with his kids, why isn't there any footage of that? You just see Justin Bieber and Diddy, Justin Bieber and Diddy. You don't see Justin Bieber. I'm just saying, I ain't saying those videos don't exist. I'm just saying I haven't seen them. Any footage of Diddy's kids and Justin Bieber hanging out, having fun together. To me, it sounded like Diddy was trying to take Justin Bieber under his wing, show him the industry, show him the rope, show him all the stuff that comes with the fame, if you know what I mean.
There isn't, and the defense is obviously trying to separate physical harm from sex trafficking and sexual assault, but the average person who's watching isn't going to be making that distinction. That may matter in the case, but it's not going to matter in the court of public opinion.
And Bieber's statement, it comes as this TikTok started floating around on Friday. There was a doctored image of Bieber where he allegedly announces that he's going to testify again.
That morning, Diddy entered the courtroom, poised, calm, and confident. With his legal team, he rearranged his suit, nodded a few times, and at one point even smiled slightly. To everyone observing, he appeared to be a man in total control, ready to take on the day. Diddy initially maintained his composure while reclining slightly in his chair. But when Justin Bieber ascended the stage, that facade started to break. Those who closely observed him saw the tension rising in his set jaw and the little narrowing of his eyes, but his countenance remained neutral. It seemed as though he had a gut feeling that things would soon change against him. With his elbows resting on the defense table, Diddy leaned forward as Bieber began speaking. At first, it appeared as though he was delivering. Though those small gestures suggested otherwise, Bieber gave it his whole attention. He lightly drummed his fingers on the table. His attorneys whispered to him, but he waved them away rather than conversing, concentrating solely on Bieber. Composed facade he had previously maintained was gradually disintegrating. His body language changed with each devastating statement Bieber made. And witnesses later described him as obviously anxious. When Bieber mentioned the exclusive events that had been discussed for years, Diddy's facade began to fall apart. He appeared to be fighting to control himself as his jaw clenched and he looked down with his hand placed tightly to his lips. Bieber's testimony didn't merely confirm the suspicions circulating about Diddy's name. This was no longer just another typical court day. It's made them more intense than anyone in his camp had expected. It was evident from his legal team's response. The whispered conversations were desperate. Their meticulously regulated manner started to falter, much like their customers. The pivotal moment was when Bieber, staring straight at the jury, hinted that not just himself but also others had been profoundly impacted. Diddy broke down at that point. He muttered something so loud that anyone around him could hear him, but it wasn't clear enough to see. He gently rubbed his forehead with his hand, an action one witness in the courtroom uttered a wordless scream. Diddy briefly appeared to be about to say something as the tapping fingers curled into fists. Whatever it was, in an attempt to calm him, one of his lawyers even placed a gentle hand on his arm to stop him. There was a significant change in the courtroom environment. Reporters exchanged glances while crawling away, documenting every aspect of his response. Clearly in a state of shock at what they were witnessing, onlookers whispered to each other. Diddy's dominance was well known. Of that was gone, as was his ability to dominate a room with a single glance. Instead, he was utterly unprepared for the impact of Bieber's words and sat rigidly, fidgeting uneasily in his seat. The damage had already been done. Despite the defense team's best efforts to stay focused by shuffling papers and avoiding making eye contact with anyone there, Diddy's tipping point was not only apparent, but also unforgettable. One at the moment when Bieber said he felt pressured to simply comply, Diddy gave a firm shake of his head. Everyone in the room noticed the small but noticeable move, which screamed frustration, denial, and possibly even fear. As the day went on, courtroom insiders described Diddy's unraveling as the most telling moment of the trial thus far. Was he experiencing guilt, panic, or rage? The reactions were as varied as they were intense, with some surmising that his behavior suggested that he wasn't just upset about what was being said, but also about it being said at all. According to others, Diddy seldom, if ever, displayed vulnerability, and the accusations had caused his serenity to crumble. The general public, the change in enthusiasm was noticeable by the time the court adjourned. Diddy left the room swiftly, encircled by his crew, who appeared anxious to keep him out of sight immediately. There was conjecture that his response would be remembered by the jury as much as Bieber's testimony because, let's face it, when someone who has made a living on control and power begins to exhibit weaknesses, people take notice. In this instance, those weaknesses may not only be personal, they could have a significant impact on the verdict of the trial. Later, witnesses whispered that they wondered if this was the moment that turned things around and from which even Diddy couldn't bounce back.
At this trial, pointing the finger at anybody. But there are those who I'm sure will say, if celebrities knew something, why didn't they say something? And by the way, that came up with the Harvey Weinstein case, right? People allegedly knew of rumors about his behaviors, but rumors one thing, how much do you definitively know? What do you say to that? Because again, we obviously don't know who knew what. I don't believe this trial is going to sort through any of that whatsoever. I don't think we're going to be seeing big names either being named in this trial or even taking the stand. But what do you say to the argument somebody had to know something if these allegations are true?
Look, I think it's a fair argument, Jesse. This seems like it was one of the worst kept secrets in Hollywood. How can you sexually abuse or assault people for a span of years or decades and people not know? Especially when a lot of this happened in hotel rooms or with other people around. This is the same arguments people make with respect to Weinstein or Epstein or other abusers. This isn't your typical sexual assault that is behind closed doors without other people present. That's one of the things that makes this case so unique. And look, there is going to be speculation and there is going to be rumors and there are going to be rumors. And that's what social media is all about. I mean, we saw some of the rumors dispelled this week when Cassie was saying, you know what, the baby oil didn't contain drugs. Even the government star witness is addressing some of these rumors on that witness stand. I'm not surprised Bieber and his reps are doing the same.
And so we contacted Justin's reps and we kind of laid out what we found. And we said, look, this is what, multiple people have been telling us who were in his life, and are no longer, and also people who are in his life now. So we've talked to both. And I think that's really important because he's jettisoned so many people in his life. And they thought about it for a while and then contacted us back, and they actually gave us an on-the-record statement that Justin is not a victim of Diddy's. They said that there are other victims and they don't want to detract from them, but they said that Justin is...
After the shocking court disclosures, everyone is wondering if Justin Bieber's testimony will indeed be the pivotal moment that elevates the case against Diddy to a new level. The trial has been rocked by Bieber's sudden action, leaving Diddy's defense team reeling and the public, wondering if this could be the beginning of the end for one of the most influential people in the music industry. What does this signify for Diddy, therefore, and why? First, let's examine why Bieber's statements are so important. Is his testimony such a game changer? His testimony wasn't limited to making fresh accusations against Diddy. It depicted a long-standing power dynamic that many had hypothesized but were never able to confirm. Diddy portrayed himself as an untouchable force in the industry for years. With the ability to dictate narratives and mold careers, Bieber's remarks called into question all of that. Bieber provided the prosecution with something concrete by discussing the parties, the unwritten norms, and the events he saw could be used to support their argument. His statements could be disastrous for Diddy's legal defense if they corroborate other statements or pieces of evidence. The history between the two is what amplifies the impact of this. Bieber was formerly close to Diddy, so he wasn't simply another outsider looking in. At one point, their relationship appeared to be mentor to protege, with Diddy allegedly helping Bieber become one of pop's biggest stars. They were frequently pictured together, and Diddy is renowned for having given Bieber a white Lamborghini when he was only in his teens. Their friendship appeared intimate and even familiar to an outsider at times. But it just strengthens Bieber's case against Diddy. Bieber was obviously affected by whatever caused their relationship to end, because it's not something you do lightly. To testify in a high-profile case like this, especially against someone who formerly had a big impact on your career. This leads us to the actual courtroom. Bieber's testimony had an instant impact. Witnesses recounted the incident as a total change in mood that made Diddy clearly upset and his legal staff notably more anxious. Diddy had maintained his confidence up until that time, but Bieber's remarks completely altered the atmosphere. Legal experts refer to it as a turning point, with one stating, "An insider like Bieber testifying brings a level of credibility that's hard to ignore." Others conjectured that his evidence immediately compelled the defense to reconsider their approach. Would others be inspired to attend by Bieber's testimony ahead? That is the unanswered question. Bieber has effectively made room for more witnesses by taking the stand, including those who may have witnessed or experienced similar acts but were previously too scared to speak up. The willingness of a well-known person like Justin Bieber to testify conveys the idea that everyone, including Diddy, is subject to accountability. If more witnesses come out to support Bieber's remarks, Diddy might suffer greatly in court and in the eyes of the public. Given that it appeared like a day they would prefer to forget, what are the immediate repercussions for Diddy's legal team? Insiders claim that they seemed shaken after Bieber departed the stage, clearly regrouping and even asking for a quick break to reconsider their strategy. This alone demonstrates just how powerful Bieber's remarks were. In addition to personally upsetting Diddy, his testimony made his legal team think about how they would bounce back. Furthermore, you must not undervalue the harm to one's reputation. This trial and Bieber's testimony in particular might cast a lasting stain on someone like Diddy, whose career is based on influence and an almost impenetrable image. Influence in the field has always relied on a certain amount of control and mystique. As Bieber pulls back the curtain and reveals what's transpired behind closed doors, control is beginning to fall apart, and the world is taking notice. Could this cause others to completely distance themselves from Diddy in order to safeguard their own reputations? Potentially, one thing is obvious. Bieber's testimony marked a sea change for Diddy's meticulously constructed image as well as for the trial. It's unclear if it will be sufficient to close the prosecution's case, but it has already made an impression. The courtroom may have subsided following Bieber's departure, but his remarks are still having an impact. What transpires next may determine Diddy's destiny as well as whether or not Bieber and others follow in his footsteps. Diddy's notorious private parties have long been the Hollywood's hub for rumors. Yes, those parties were legendary. But they were also shrouded in mystery, and only a select few were allowed entry. Insiders and rising stars in the industry who never disclosed what happened behind closed doors, however. The rumors weren't at all quiet. However, Bieber's testimony couldn't have come at a worse moment for Diddy's reputation. His remarks weren't just accusations. They were windows into a world no one was supposed to be in. And they depicted lavish, no-holds-barred occasions where rules didn't apply. Although Bieber didn't go into great detail, his remarks cut right to the core of those claims. He mentioned the types of environments that made guests uneasy, especially those like him who started in the business at an early age. "I've been to those parties," he recalled, maintaining a composed tone. "I didn't always feel like I should be there." The public's curiosity about what precisely takes place at these events was rekindled by that single statement. Stories about Diddy's parties throughout the years have suggested that there's more to them than just crazy evenings. They've been connected to authority, a method to maintain relationships and form alliances to guarantee that there was always a hierarchy in the room. According to Bieber, they weren't parties. Rather, they were something more sinister, planned for purposes other than pure enjoyment. These parties' cultural significance was also important. Diddy's activities have been viewed for almost 20 years as instances of Hollywood mingling with the music business, where careers were advanced or occasionally subtly influenced. If you went to one, you were among the select few who made it. Additionally, for Diddy, this exclusivity went beyond status. It was in charge. In settings where quiet seemed to be an unwritten norm, his gatherings were extensions of the authority he possessed. Now that Bieber is drawing attention to them, it seems like that code is breaking. Much conjecture surrounds what Bieber might have gone through on these evenings. His statement makes it very evident that certain incidents had a significant enough impact on him to come forward years later. He once remarked, "You didn't ask questions and you did not decline." Considering his youth at the height of his stardom, those remarks were very impactful in the trial. It begs the question of what stresses he, and consequently others, may have had when interacting in Diddy's private areas. Although Bieber didn't mention anything, might these gatherings have been a place where boundaries were crossed and outward looks concealed a darker undercurrent? Directly, but it was impossible to overlook the implications. Regarding Diddy's reputation, this is a dangerous situation. They presented him as a cultural titan and tastemaker who could effortlessly combine luxury and stardom, which is what made these events so brilliant and well-known. However, Bieber's evidence completely changes that perception. They start to sound more like controlled environments created with hidden agendas than triumphant celebrations. For an expert in the field of public perception, this poses a threat. To the meticulously constructed image Diddy invested years in creating the worst thing about. Bieber finally speaking up is that you never know how many others might do the same. If other witnesses come out with similar stories, the repercussions might be enormous. Bieber's remarks are significant, not only because of his personal characteristics, but also because they revealed a weakness in the entertainment industry's broader view of power, already reeling from the dramatic events of the trial. Diddy's team may now be subject to additional scrutiny from those who have remained silent for years. Whatever occurs, the focus is now on a story that Diddy is unlikely to control rather than his history of music and economic success due to the resurgence of interest in his parties. The specifics of what Bieber disclosed regarding Diddy's parties are yet unknown. However, the slightest indication has ignited popular sentiment. Diddy's empire was founded on his ability to manage his relationships, career, and most obviously, his image. However, Bieber's statement exposed a weakness in the foundation which he hopes others won't take advantage of. This trial has put his reputation at risk. Swiftly escalated from legal issues to a full-scale cultural crisis and the ensuing ramifications. Not only for Diddy, it might change the perception of power in Hollywood for years to come. One thing is certain, but what comes next is still unknown. Diddy's parties can't remain silent indefinitely. Could Justin Bieber's testimony have signaled Diddy's demise? With each shocking disclosure, the layers that have shielded Diddy's meticulously constructed image are coming off. Once viewed as a protege, Bieber has evolved into a critical voice. In a tale nobody anticipated him telling what transpires. Now that the courtroom drama isn't abating and the inquiries into Diddy's history are simply becoming more intense. In your opinion, will Bieber's decision to testify alter everything? If this week has shown us anything, it's that the shocks are far from over. Please share your opinions below and stay tuned. From